All right, welcome back to another episode of this unnamed show without a name.
Where I learn things again. I just want to say I have taken this class before, but it was so long ago. Like what? I'm 25. Probably 10 years ago I took this class.
Yeah, that would be about 10 years ago.
More, maybe more.
But she does know things, so she just wants you to know.
But I want to re-know them with all of you.
Today you're going to re-know the fall of Rome.
I am extremely excited about this because I feel like it's dramatic, and you know I love a good drama.
Dramas are the best, yes.
Dramas are the best. So I'm excited. Give me the dirt of the fall of Rome.
All right, well, let's start right off. So before we talk about the fall of Rome, we're going to talk real quick about the background. Just some details to know because it comes into play a little bit later on. The first is that Rome was huge. We talked about this before, right? It is freaking big. This is all of Rome's empire, right? He owns all this. Well, it got so big, they decided, you know what we're going to do? And we're going to split it. We're going to split it right in half. But you can see this almost like a line they draw.
How did they know, though, when there wasn't any, satellite maps? How on earth did they know how big it was?
Handmade maps, and they kind of knew. It wasn't like a specific boundary, but it was the best they could do.
The best they could.
And so they draw this line right down the middle, and they divide one half into the western half. That's over here with the capital of Rome, and then one half the eastern half with the capital, which is Byzantium or Constantinople.
Wow, they were so creative with those names.
Well, I mean, yes, but we'll talk about that. But Rome already was the capital of the city, so that was creative, yeah. Both halves also make Christianity their official religion. So Christianity becomes the major religion of this.
But Christianity, not Catholicism.
I mean, it would eventually become Catholicism, but at this time it was Christianity.
Okay.
They didn't really have any divide. So let's talk real quick about each half, starting with the eastern half, okay? So the eastern half is the half, of course, in the east, which its capital is the city of Byzantium. Yeah. But here's the thing with Byzantium. It changes names a lot. So it starts as Byzantium, okay?
Okay.
Then this guy called Constantine changes its name to Constantinople. And then later, like 300 years from what we're talking about, so add like 300 years to where we're talking about, actually more than that, it gets taken over and by Arabs, and they call it Istanbul. So today we call it Istanbul, but it used to be called Byzantium, and then after that it was Constantinople, and then finally Istanbul.
They were very indecisive when it came to
yes,
naming
because
it.
People kept wanting to put their own names on it.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, so this is their capital, and the thing about the eastern half would actually survive a lot longer than the western half. Oh. So even though it wasn't technically, we didn't actually have Rome, people there still consider themselves to be Roman, and it would survive almost 1,000 years after the western half fell.
Do each have their own Caesar?
They each have their own Caesar,
okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the eastern half survives a lot longer. Its base is in Byzantium or Constantinople. And it is, people there still consider themselves to be Roman, though. So the reason why we call it the Byzantine Empire, we call it the Byzantine Empire, the eastern half, is
That's important, isn't it, since you circled it with the pen thing?
Yes, and because it's written, yeah. Because the reason we call it Byzantine Empire is because we want to make sure we distinguish it from the western half, the whole thing combined. So we call it the Byzantine Empire. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like they're bizarre, so they need their own.
Yeah, except yeah. So let's go over now to the western half of the empire, okay?
Ooh,
the western half
doesn't look good.
It does not look good. It's never good when you see flames. So the western half would keep its capital in Rome. So right here, once again, in Italy, because obviously western half.
This is Rome's side that goes bad.
Yes, and it would actually fall in 476 AD. So that's basically when the western half falls. It was a week before that, but we're going to discuss real quick and kind of show you how it fell. Are you ready to learn about that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's zoom out and we'll get going. All right. So we got a little graphic here. Let me get this centered so we can.
Hey, that's from Mulan.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
I hope all of you kids have watched Mulan. I highly recommend it if you haven't.
So let's begin by talking about Rome. All right, so if you remember, Rome was divided at this point, as we talked about in the western half. So we're going to be talking about the western half, and we're not going to be talking about this eastern half over here.
Cool.
Because that's Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire. We're not going to be talking about that. We're just focusing on the western half and how it fell in 476.
Cool. We're from the west coast
of the United States, not Europe.
But I know, but we're from the west coast.
That's great. So this is where, if you look at this area right here, this is Germany today. And Germany had a bunch of tribes living in it. The Vandals, the Goths, and the Alans. Okay, these are three of them, but there were lots of different tribes. And the Romans called them barbarians. And it was actually a very racist term because it wasn't that they thought just because you weren't Roman, obviously you weren't civilized, you weren't basically human because you weren't Roman. So the Romans would call them barbarians, and they basically called anyone that who wasn't Roman. So we're going to call them barbarians just to help make sense of it. So they're living in this area of Germany, but then guess who's going to come along?
I'm going to say it's probably the Hun guy.
It is the Huns, yeah. So the Huns come, and the Huns are coming from Asia, and they go bloop, doop, 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 and they move in to Germany. And when they move in, all of a sudden, there's not enough room for everyone there. And so what has to happen? These barbarians have to move. And where do they move?
Down.
Yes, they start moving into
Eastern Europe.
Into Western Europe. Yeah, they start moving to Western Europe. Okay, so they start going, they go,
Do Goths have anything to do with, like, emo, like, goth, the thing? Like, black hair?
A little
like,
bit, but not really.
Not really, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they come,
it's on fire.
and when they move, they destroy a whole lot of Rome, of Europe with them. They destroy a lot of territory. They blow up a lot of cities, stuff like that, and they start moving it in. And Rome begins to realize that all these groups are moving in, and they just can't deal with it. And as they are going destroying things, they're taking away the tax base that Rome had. So now Rome's not getting very much tax money because they're taking it away. And they just keep moving. Eventually they get to Africa. And Africa is actually, during this time, is where they get most of their money from.
Really?
Rome does, yes. They get a lot of their crops and money. So when they lose it, all of a sudden Rome's now really in trouble. And Rome can't pay its debt. It tries to make allies with them, tries to get them to help each other. But it's just not working.
Do Western and Eastern share the money?
No. They each
they're
have their own
separate.
spot, yeah.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Huns try to attack Rome a couple times, but they really can't get in. But still, they do enough damage that eventually, this is where the barbarians are able to come, and the Vandals. If you ever heard the word vandalize to spray paints, well, it's because the Vandals went to Rome and they basically destroyed it.
Wow.
And they destroyed Rome, and they would raid it. They start destroying it, and this huge city that used to be like this big giant city is now pretty much crushed by these barbarians who've now come on.
Man.
Yeah. And in 476, it becomes official. The last Roman Empire dies. A German guy tries to take them over. And, and that's basically it. And that's how these German barbarians, in fact, the Germans kind of took over the world during this time. Like, most people are descendants of Germans. Even if you're Italian, there's a good chance you're part German because your great ancestors came from Germany.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have ancestors from Germany.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay, my question though is, do you feel like there's always a power that is like number one? So like Rome was number one in the entire world, right?
Yeah.
And then Germany became number one?
Mm-hmm.
And then was it Britain? Because then they took over everything?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's
always one mega guy,
Usually,
but
yeah.
Rome was it for a long time.
Yeah, well, if
and
you're
before
China,
Greece, which we learned about before.
Yeah, but it varies because, obviously about your time of it. And in Greece, back then, now the world's a lot more united. Back then you didn't know, right? If you're from Greece, you had no idea about China. You're like, I
That
don't know
is
what
true.
China
You can't
is.
just
Yeah.
go on YouTube. And
Same thing with Rome. They didn't know about China either. They really just kind of focused on their own thing.
I guess now the thing
Yeah.
is like TikTok.
That's something very different, but okay.
Yeah.
So, now it's time for our Mrs. Magera's tea.
Tea time. Today we have Saran. What is it? Saran? It's from Sri Lanka. I have tried this before. It is very delicious. Just a little bit of sugar.
A little bit.
It is a little bit. Thank you.
A lot of it.
It's a little bit of sugar.
Continue. Give us spill your tea.
Anyway, let's talk about the tea today. So I was like trying to find tea on the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire, and really all I could find is that the poor people actually liked that it fell, because apparently you can tell me if this is right or wrong, but apparently the poor people actually were living horrible lives in Rome, like the people that were on the bottom, because they were having to pay taxes like crazy. And they were getting nothing from it, and they were like starving. Is that true?
I mean, I'm sure some of them definitely didn't like it. There were some that died, probably didn't like it. But it's a little bit of mix.
I bet they didn't like it.
Yeah.
But that's not the tea that I got. So the tea that I got is about the Hun that you were talking about. Attila the Hun. He was the head Hun, And right.
Yeah, the head
Yes.
honcho.
He
you
was
can
the
almost say.
what?
The head honcho. You can almost say.
Funny, I married him for his wit. Anyway, so Attila the Hun. This guy was shady. We should have a shady character of the day, and if we did, Attila the Hun would be it.
What do you do?
Did you know he killed his brother just so he could have more power? Like, he was already in power and had, like, all his power, and he's like, but he shared it with his brother, and he's like, you know what? Screw you, killing you. And so he could have more power.
Wow.
And then he literally took over a country just so he could, like, have a wife.
Oh.
Which, low-key, is kind of romantic in a really twisted way. But yeah, so that...
Romantic to know he killed thousands of people.
I don't know if he killed them. I just know he started a war, so I'm assuming there was some bloodshed.
Oh.
But, I mean...
Wow.
Would you not take over a country for me?
Probably not. That's a very high death toll.
I wouldn't want you to. I don't want you to kill people. Just come in and be like, I need her.
Well, anyways,
Anyway.
that is some very good tea.
That's the tea.
Bye, guys.